My husband is blind, and now I can sell multi-million-dollar properties and do anyhow I want.
Hello, my man friend. You can come. My husband is blind.
Mr. Chin, I'm afraid the diagnosis is permanent blindness. David Chen lay in his hospital bed in downtown Chicago, bandages wrapped around his head. His girlfriend Sarah stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm. To anyone watching, she appeared devoted, concerned. But David had seen something that shattered him more than any diagnosis could. When the doctor first mentioned permanent blindness, Sarah's face had flickered with something unexpected, a smile. Just for a moment. But David caught it. Because miraculously, his vision had returned that very morning. The doctors were amazed. The swelling had gone down faster than expected. David could see perfectly. But something made him say, "Don't tell anyone. Not yet." Now, watching Sarah through half-closed eyes, he understood why his instincts had screamed at him to wait. That smile. That terrible, revealing smile. Don't forget to watch full video so that you will never miss next story. Share the video to 1,000 people and tell me on the comment where you're watching from. Over the next weeks, David would discover exactly who he'd been planning to marry. And what she was planning to do with everything he'd built. Subscribe to Urban Legends Retold and hit the bell. This story will leave you speechless. The construction site accident happened on a Tuesday afternoon. David Chen, one of Chicago's most successful architects at 36, had been reviewing plans for his latest project, a mixed-use development in the West Loop worth $40 million. A crane operator misjudged a load. Steel beams came crashing down. David dove for cover, but debris struck him hard, sending him tumbling down a scaffold. When he woke in Northwestern Memorial Hospital 3 days later, the world was black. Dr. Martinez, a neurologist, examined him thoroughly. Traumatic optic neuropathy, she explained to Sarah. The impact caused severe swelling around the optic nerves. Sarah Chen, well, soon to be Chen, sat beside David's bed. They'd been engaged for 6 months, planning a wedding for the following spring. She was beautiful, poised, a marketing executive who'd swept into his life at a charity gala 18 months ago. Will he recover? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. It's difficult to say. The next 72 hours are critical. For 3 days, David lived in darkness. He heard Sarah's voice constantly, comforting, reassuring, loving. She barely left his side. His business partner Marcus visited, bringing updates about the firm. His sister called from Seattle, crying. On the 4th morning, David woke before dawn. Something felt different. He blinked. Once. Twice. Light. Shapes. Colors. His vision had returned, blurry at first, then sharpening with each passing minute. Heart racing, he pressed the call button. Dr. Martinez arrived within minutes, conducting test after test. "This is extraordinary, Mr. Chen," she said, unable to hide her excitement. "Complete recovery. The swelling resolved faster than I've ever seen. You're incredibly lucky." David should have been ecstatic. Should have been celebrating. But something held him back, an instinct he couldn't explain. "Don't tell anyone yet," he said suddenly. "I need time to process this." Dr. Martinez frowned. "Your girlfriend will be here soon. Surely you want to tell her." "Not yet. Please. Just give me 48 hours. The doctor clearly thought he was in shock, dealing with trauma in an unusual way. But she agreed to maintain the fiction of his blindness for 2 days. When Sarah arrived at 9, David kept his eyes closed as Dr. Martinez delivered the false prognosis. "I'm afraid the news isn't good," she said gravely. "The damage appears to be permanent. Mr. Chen will need to adjust to life without sight." Through his closed eyelids, David tracked Sarah's movement. He heard her sharp intake of breath. Then silence. Permanent. Sarah's voice sounded strange. "You're certain. As certain as we can be at this stage." I'm very sorry. More silence. Then Sarah's hand found his, squeezing gently. We'll get through this, David. Together. But it was what happened next that changed everything. After Dr. Martinez left, Sarah said she needed to make a phone call. David heard her footsteps moving to the doorway. Then, carefully, he opened his eyes to narrow slits. Through the small window in the door, he watched her in the hallway. She pulled out her phone, dialing quickly. Her back was to him, but her entire posture transformed. She threw her head back and laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a stressed laugh. A genuine, delighted laugh. She gestured animatedly with her free hand, almost dancing. Then she glanced back toward his room, and David snapped his eyes shut again. When she returned, her mask was back in place. That was my mom, she said softly. She's worried about you. About us. I'm sorry, Sarah, David whispered, his throat tight. I know this changes everything. Don't say that. Her hand found his again. We'll figure it out. I love you. David lay there, heart pounding, mind racing. That laugh. That transformation. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. That evening, after Sarah left to shower and change clothes, David called Marcus. I need to see you. Alone. It's urgent. When Marcus arrived, David opened his eyes fully. I can see, he said quietly. Perfectly. But nobody can know. Especially not Sarah. Marcus Rodriguez had been David's best friend since architecture school. Now his business partner and CFO at Chan & Associates, Marcus stared at David in shock. You can see. But the doctor said. The doctor is covering for me. I asked her to. David sat up in bed, meeting Marcus's eyes directly. Something's wrong, Marcus. Really wrong. He explained about the smile, the laugh, the complete transformation he'd witnessed in the hallway. Marcus listened, his expression growing darker. Brother, I never fully trusted her, Marcus admitted. The way she targeted you at that gala, how she always steered conversations toward your projects, your assets. But I thought maybe I was just being overprotective. Tell me you kept digging into her background like I asked you to before the proposal. Marcus hesitated. I did some preliminary work. But David, you were so happy, and nothing screamed red flag on the surface. Clean credit, legitimate job history, no criminal record. Go deeper, David said firmly. I need to know everything. Who she really is, what she wants, who else might be involved. Can you do that without tipping her off? I know people. Private investigators. Forensic accountants. How long do you want to keep up this act? David looked out the hospital window at the Chicago skyline. His city. His life. Everything he'd built from nothing after his parents died. As long as it takes to see the whole picture. They spent the next hour planning. Marcus would maintain the public fiction, acting as David's advocate while secretly investigating Sarah. David would need to become an actor, convincing enough to fool everyone. This is going to hurt, Marcus warned. Watching her true colors emerge and not being able to react. I need to know the truth, David said simply. All of it. Over the next 2 days, David practiced. He moved carefully around his hospital room, bumping into chairs, reaching past objects. Dr. Martinez coached him on what genuine blind patients experienced. The frustration, the adjustment, the dependency. Sarah visited daily, bringing flowers, reading to him, holding his hand. She seemed attentive, loving. But David noticed things now. How her touch was mechanical. How she checked her phone constantly when she thought he wasn't aware. How her voice never quite matched the words she spoke. On his 3rd evening of blindness, Sarah received a call. I need to take this, honey. Work emergency. Through his closed eyes, David tracked her movement. The moment she stepped into the hallway, he opened them slightly. Through the door window, he watched her animation, her excited gestures. She was facing away, but he could read her body language. This wasn't a work call. This was personal, intimate. When she returned, she was subdued again. Sorry, babe. Crisis with a client campaign. It's fine, David murmured. You should go home, get rest. You've been here so much. I want to be here for you. But David saw the relief flash across her face when he insisted she leave. The next morning, Marcus returned with news. I've got a preliminary report. David, you need to brace yourself. He pulled out his tablet, keeping his voice low. Sarah Thompson isn't exactly who she says she is. Her previous name was Sarah Miller. She changed it 7 years ago after a fraud investigation in Denver. No charges filed, but she was connected to a man who scammed elderly investors. David's stomach churned. Connected how? Romantically involved. She claimed ignorance, cooperated with authorities, and walked away clean when he took the fall. Marcus swiped to another page. Since then, she's had 3 serious relationships. All with wealthy men. All ended within 2 years with substantial gifts or settlements. She's a professional, David said flatly. It gets worse. I've been monitoring her communications, legally gray area, but I hired the best tech guy I know. She's been in regular contact with someone named Ryan Blake. Real estate developer, failed businessman, questionable reputation. David's blood ran cold. Ryan Blake had been trying to undercut him on projects for years. How regular? Daily. And David? Marcus hesitated. They've met at the Peninsula Hotel 6 times in the past 2 months. Always the same room. The betrayal cut deep, but David forced himself to think clearly. She's working with him. This isn't just about leaving me, this is about taking everything. That's my theory. We need more evidence. Then we keep playing, David said grimly. I get discharged tomorrow. Let's see what she does when she thinks she has me trapped at home. David's penthouse overlooked Lake Michigan from the Gold Coast neighborhood. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern design, African art collection, everything he'd carefully curated over a decade. Now, entering it blind, he had to pretend he couldn't see any of it. Sarah guided him through the door, her hand on his arm. Careful, babe. Step up here. Marcus followed, carrying bags. They'd arranged for Marcus to be present often, giving David a trusted ally in the apartment. Should we rearrange furniture? Sarah asked. Make it easier for you to navigate? No, David said quickly. I need to learn to adapt. Dr. Martinez said maintaining familiar surroundings helps. He caught Marcus's approving nod. They discussed this. Any changes Sarah made would reveal her real intentions. That first week was brutal. David had to consciously restrict his movements, reach for objects incorrectly, ask for help with simple tasks. Every moment felt like a performance, and the exhaustion was real. But what exhausted him more was watching Sarah transform. On day 3, David pretended to nap in the afternoon. Sarah thought he was sleeping and went into his home office. Through carefully slitted eyes, David watched her photograph documents. His will, property deeds, investment portfolios, business contracts. She was systematic, methodical. She photographed everything, uploaded it somewhere, then carefully returned items to their exact positions. 17 minutes. She spent 17 minutes stealing his financial life, then came back to check on him with a smile. You're awake. I was just checking emails in your office. Hope you don't mind. Want some lunch? Every word was a lie wrapped in sweetness. That evening, Marcus came for dinner. After they ate, Sarah excused herself for a bath. Marcus immediately pulled out his tablet. The hotel room she shares with Blake? I got security footage. They've been meeting there for 4 months, started before you even proposed. David's jaw clenched. What else? I tracked her communications. She's been in touch with a lawyer specializing in disability law and estate planning. And David, Marcus's voice dropped. She's been researching something called conservatorship. Conservatorship. David's architectural mind worked through the implications. That's when someone gets legal control over another person's affairs. Exactly. If she can prove you're incapable of managing your own finances due to disability, she could petition to become your legal guardian. At which point, she controls everything. David stood, moving carefully to the window. The city lights sparkled below. She's not just planning to leave me. She's planning to trap me legally. It gets worse, Marcus continued. I found communication about what they call the final solution. No details yet, but the tone suggests, David, I think once she has your money, she's planning something permanent. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. So she'll trap me, take everything, and then what? An accident. A medical emergency. I don't have proof yet. But brother, we need to consider ending this now. Go to the police with what we have. David turned back to his friend. What do we have? Photos of documents she has every right to look at as my fiancée? Hotel meetings that could be explained away as friendship? Conversations about conservatorship that a concerned girlfriend might legitimately research? We have her past, her pattern, which she walked away from clean before. No, Marcus. We need her caught in the act. The conservatorship petition, false testimony, documents filed with the court. I need undeniable evidence. How long can you keep this up? As long as necessary. Over the next days, David noticed more changes in Sarah's behavior. She became less patient with his questions, more dismissive of his concerns. When he asked about their wedding, she waved it off. We'll discuss that later. You need to focus on adjusting. She began screening his calls, claiming he needed rest. When his sister wanted to visit, Sarah suggested waiting until David was ready for visitors. She was building a cage around him, and she thought he couldn't see the bars. One night, David deliberately knocked over a glass of water. It shattered on the marble floor. Don't! Sarah snapped, her voice sharp with impatience. Then she caught herself, softening. I mean, you'll cut yourself, babe. Let me clean it up. But David had seen her face in that unguarded moment. Not concern. Not love. Pure irritation. Disgust, even. At him. At having to pretend to care. That night, lying beside her in bed, David stared at the ceiling he could see perfectly. How did you protect yourself from someone who slept beside you every night? Someone who smiled while planning your destruction? David, sweetheart, I've been thinking. Sarah sat across from him at breakfast, her voice carrying that honey-sweet tone he'd learned to dread. Behind his dark glasses, necessary, she believed, for his light sensitivity, David watched her carefully. I found someone who can help us. A professional care specialist who works with vision-impaired individuals. He comes highly recommended. David's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. I have you. I have Marcus checking in. I don't need. Baby, I'm exhausted, Sarah interrupted, and for once her voice carried genuine emotion. Frustration. I'm trying to manage everything. Your care, the household, fielding calls from your business. I need help. Something in her tone set off alarms. When would this person start? Actually, today. I took the liberty of arranging a trial period. His name is Ryan. Ryan Blake. The coffee cup slipped from David's fingers. Hot liquid splashed across the table. He jerked back, playing up the surprise and clumsiness. Oh, David. Sarah rushed around the table, dabbing at the spill. This is exactly why we need more help. But David's mind was racing. Ryan Blake. His business rival. Sarah's lover. She was bringing him into their home, into David's most vulnerable moments, under the guise of helping. The audacity was breathtaking. I don't know about a stranger in our home. He's not a stranger to me, Sarah said quickly. I've known him for years. He's completely trustworthy. Known him for years. David filed that away. Another lie. According to Marcus's research, they'd connected through a mutual acquaintance specifically targeting David's circle. Please, David, just give it a try. Every instinct screamed refusal. But Marcus's words echoed, until we have everything. If Sarah was bold enough to bring Ryan here, what would they reveal when they thought David was completely helpless? All right, David said slowly. A trial period. Ryan Blake arrived that afternoon. David sat in the living room, supposedly reading a Braille book Marcus had provided as a prop. Through his dark glasses, he studied the man who'd been sleeping with his fiancée. Ryan was tall, conventionally handsome, and moved with the confidence of someone who thought he was smarter than everyone around him. Mr. Chen, I'm here to make your life easier, Ryan said, his handshake aggressive, trying to establish dominance. Sarah tells me you've been struggling. Mr. Chen. Not David. Not even Sir, with respect. Just cold formality that revealed what Ryan really thought of him. For the next hour, David endured Ryan's patronizing questions and suggestions. All the while, Sarah watched with barely concealed satisfaction. That night, after Ryan left with promises to return the next morning, David sat in his study waiting for Marcus's call. But before his friend could ring, David heard voices from above. Sarah's bedroom was directly above the study, and the old building's ventilation system carried sound in unexpected ways. David had discovered this weeks ago. Can't believe you actually came to the house. Sarah's voice, breathy with laughter. Why not? Ryan replied. The blind fool has no idea. This is perfect. I can see you every day, and he'll think I'm here to help him. How long until the conservatorship papers are ready? 2 weeks. The lawyer is preparing everything. Once we file with the medical documentation you've obtained, it should move quickly. And then we just transfer the assets. Their voices dropped, and David heard movement. He didn't need to see to know they were kissing. In his home. Steps away from where he sat. His vision blurred, not with blindness, but with rage and grief. His phone buzzed. Marcus. I have updates, Marcus said. Are you alone? Never alone anymore, David said bitterly. Sarah brought Ryan into the house. As my caretaker. Marcus's string of Spanish curses was creative. She brought her lover to your home? David, this is dangerous. What did you find? They have an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The plan is to transfer your liquid assets there, then slowly liquidate your property and business shares. They've been planning this for 8 months, since before she even accepted your proposal. 8 months. Their entire relationship had been a lie from the beginning. There's more, Marcus continued. I found messages about the final solution. David, once they have your money, I think they're planning to eliminate you permanently. Then we move faster, David said coldly. I want surveillance. Hidden cameras. Every room except bathrooms. Can you arrange it? Already working on it. Installation tomorrow while Sarah's supposedly visiting her mother. Good. Let them get comfortable. Let them think they've won. And Marcus. Yeah. Make sure those cameras are high quality. I want every word, every moment, every confession. Marcus's team installed the cameras on Thursday while Sarah was out. Tiny, professional-grade devices hidden in smoke detectors, behind picture frames, inside decorative objects. Every room except the bathrooms was now being recorded and live-streamed to a secure server. David had arranged for Ryan to take him to a doctor's appointment, keeping up appearances while giving Marcus's team access to the apartment. How's the adjustment going? Ryan asked in the car, his tone dripping with false concern. It's hard, David admitted. That much was true. Some days I wonder if it's worth fighting to adapt. He felt rather than saw Ryan's satisfaction. They wanted him defeated, dependent, ready to give up control. That evening, sitting in his living room with Sarah and Ryan both present, David felt like a player in a dark theater. He knew he was being watched, by his own cameras, but they didn't. Every word, every glance, every touch was being recorded. David seems to be adjusting well, Ryan said to Sarah, speaking about him as if he weren't there. As if he were an object, not a person. He's trying, Sarah replied. But I think the reality is settling in. This is permanent. His life will never be the same. Such a shame, Ryan said, and David heard the smile in his voice. A man with so much to lose. Later, after Ryan left, David sat in his study reviewing footage from earlier that day on his hidden tablet. Marcus had given him remote access to all the cameras. What he saw made his blood boil. Sarah and Ryan in the kitchen, laughing while David was supposedly napping. Ryan's hands on Sarah's waist. Sarah throwing her head back as Ryan whispered something in her ear. God, I can't wait until this is over, Sarah said on the recording. Playing the devoted fiancée is exhausting. Just a few more weeks, Ryan replied. Once the conservatorship goes through, we transfer everything, and then the accident, Sarah finished. A medication mix-up. He's blind, confused. These things happen to disabled people all the time. David stopped the playback. His hands were shaking. They were planning to kill him. Not eventually. Not maybe. Definitely. With a specific method. With callous certainty. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Did you see today's footage? Saw enough, David said, his voice hollow. Brother, we have them. On recording, planning your murder. We can go to the police right now. And they'll lawyer up, claim it was dark humor, claim the recordings are out of context. No, we need more. We need the conservatorship petition filed, need them to commit actual legal fraud in court. That's weeks away. Can you survive that long? I don't have a choice. Over the next days, the surveillance revealed layers of betrayal David hadn't imagined. Sarah going through his safe while he was supposedly showering. Ryan photographing business documents during his care sessions. The two of them in David's bed when he was out, actually in his bed, in his home. One recording particularly gutted him. Sarah on the phone with someone. Her mother, apparently. No, Mom, I don't feel guilty. He's loaded and he'll never miss it. Besides, he was always a boring boyfriend. Too focused on his stupid buildings. Ryan's exciting. Ryan gets me. But murder, Sarah. Her mother's voice came through the phone. We're not calling it that. It's an accident. And honestly, he'll never know what hit him. He's helpless now. Practically a child. I'm doing him a favor, really. This life would be miserable for him anyway. David sat in his dark study, listening to the woman he'd planned to marry dismiss his murder as a mercy. Marcus found more evidence. The lawyer Sarah hired was drafting documents claiming David was mentally incompetent due to his disability. 3 doctors, all on Ryan's payroll, were prepared to testify that David couldn't manage his own affairs. The hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from now, Marcus reported. They're moving fast. Let them, David said. The faster they move, the more mistakes they'll make. But one recording shook David's resolve. Late at night, Sarah brought him his medication, blood pressure pills he didn't actually need, but continued taking to maintain the fiction. The camera in their bedroom captured what happened next. After David pretended to swallow the pills and settled into sleep, Sarah pulled out a small bottle from her purse. She carefully extracted several pills, examined them, then hid them in her bedside drawer. Soon, she whispered to the sleeping David. Or so she thought. Very soon, baby. Just a few more weeks and this will all be over. David lay there, seeing everything through carefully slitted eyes, listening to the woman he loved plan his death in detail. I've been thinking about the wedding, Sarah announced over breakfast. David's fork stopped midway to his mouth. They were 3 weeks from the conservatorship hearing. 2 weeks from when Sarah planned to commit legal perjury. I thought we agreed to postpone, he said carefully. I don't want to wait anymore. Sarah's voice carried an edge of determination. I want to marry you, David. Now. Soon. Behind his dark glasses, David's eyes narrowed. What's the rush? Rush. We've been engaged for over a year. I want to take care of you properly. As your wife. With all the legal rights and protections that provides. There it was. Legal rights. Legal claim to his assets even before the conservatorship went through. Sarah, I don't want you to feel obligated. I'm not obligated. She moved around the table, taking his hands. I love you. I want to be your wife. Don't you want that too? It was a trap. Refusing would make her suspicious. Agreeing would give her additional legal leverage. Of course I do, David said softly. When were you thinking? 2 weeks. Small ceremony. Just close friends and family. The same weekend as the conservatorship hearing. She was planning to hit him from both sides, legal marriage and legal guardianship, ensuring her control would be complete. After Sarah left for work, David immediately called Marcus. She wants to marry me in 2 weeks. Absolutely not. If you actually marry her, even for a day, it complicates everything. She could claim spousal rights, challenge every asset protection we've set up. I know. But if I refuse, she'll know something's wrong. David paced his apartment, no longer pretending to stumble. I need her confident, comfortable, convinced she's winning. Brother, she's planning to kill you. We have recordings. We can end this today. On what charges? Conspiracy. She'll make bail and we'll lose our chance to catch her in the bigger crime. David's mind worked through the possibilities. No. The wedding happens. But that morning before the ceremony, I'll sign a prenuptial agreement. One she doesn't know about. A secret prenup. Ironclad. Prepared by the best matrimonial lawyers in Chicago. Filed with the court before the ceremony. Notarized. Witnessed. Undeniable. She'll think marriage gives her claim to everything. In reality, she gets nothing. Marcus was quiet for a moment. And if she tries something before the conservatorship hearing? Then I remove these glasses early and end the charade. But I don't think she will. She's methodical. She'll wait until she has legal cover. Until she's my wife and guardian. Until the medication accident can't be questioned. Over the next days, David watched Sarah plan their wedding. She kept the guest list small, suspiciously small. His sister was told the ceremony was postponed. His business partners received regrets citing his need for privacy. Just intimate friends, Sarah explained. You don't want to be overwhelmed, do you? But David saw the truth. She was isolating him, ensuring anyone who truly cared about him would be absent. The guest list was mostly her friends and family, and the 3 doctors scheduled to testify at the conservatorship hearing. 1 week before the ceremony, Marcus delivered the secret prenuptial agreement. Signed, filed, bulletproof, Marcus said. Even if you marry her, she has 0 claim to anything you acquired before the marriage. And anything acquired during the marriage requires both signatures to be considered joint property. Perfect. David, your sister called me. She's hurt that she's not invited. David paused. His sister Emma, 5 years younger, was his only living family besides some cousins. Tell her to come anyway. Tell her to arrive an hour before the ceremony and bring anyone who wants to come. I want people there who actually love me. I want real witnesses. Marcus smiled slowly. You're going to do it at the wedding. I'm going to do it at the wedding. That night, Sarah brought David his medication as usual. Behind his glasses, he watched her hand him the pills and water. What she didn't know was that Marcus had replaced all his actual medications with placebos weeks ago. Whatever she might have added to them, David would be safe. Sleep well, baby, Sarah whispered, kissing his forehead. You too, David replied. Lying in the darkness, a darkness he could see through perfectly, David counted down. 7 days until the wedding. 7 days until he could remove these glasses and watch her perfect plan crumble. But first, he had to survive whatever final preparations she and Ryan had planned. Through the bedroom camera feed on his hidden tablet, David watched Sarah pull out her phone and text someone. Wedding confirmed. 2 weeks after that, the accident. Then we're free. David set down the tablet and stared at the ceiling. 1 week. He just needed to survive 1 more week. David woke before dawn on his wedding day. Beside him, Sarah slept peacefully, her face serene in the soft morning light filtering through the curtains. Looking at her now, he could almost remember why he'd fallen in love with her. Almost. His phone buzzed silently. Marcus, everything is in place. Police are standing by. Your sister and family are on their way. Are you ready? David typed back. I've been ready since the day I saw her smile at my blindness. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m. at a small chapel in Lincoln Park that Sarah had chosen. The morning passed in surreal preparation. Sarah was radiant, excited, touching him constantly. Today you become mine, she whispered while helping him into his custom suit. Officially, legally mine. Officially, legally yours, David agreed, adjusting his dark glasses. At 1 p.m., Sarah left to prepare at a hotel with her bridesmaids. I want the first time you see me today to be when I'm walking down the aisle, she said, kissing him goodbye. I love you, David. I love you too, he replied, tasting ashes in his mouth. The moment her car left, Marcus arrived with David's real wedding party. His sister Emma, his younger cousin, childhood friends, his actual lawyers. And in an unmarked car parked discreetly down the street, 2 Chicago police detectives. David. Emma threw her arms around him, then stepped back, studying his face. Marcus told me everything. Can you really see? David removed his sunglasses. I can see everything, Em. His sister's hand flew to her mouth. That evil woman. What she's done to you. Not for much longer. David replaced the glasses. But I need you all to act surprised to be here, but happy. Can you do that? His family and friends nodded grimly. At 2:45 p.m., David arrived at the chapel. The small space was decorated simply. White flowers, elegant ribbons. Sarah's 20 guests were already seated, whispering among themselves. When David entered with Marcus as his guide, the whispers grew louder. He recognized the 3 doctors, Sarah's cousin who'd been feeding her information, various friends who'd been complicit in isolating him. And sitting in the front row, bold as could be, Ryan Blake, listed in the program as special family friend. Then his family entered. The surprise on Sarah's guests' faces was palpable. This wasn't part of the plan. The controlled guest list had just doubled with people who actually cared about the groom. Emma walked directly to the front row, staring at Ryan until he moved to a different seat. At 3 p.m. exactly, the music began. David stood at the altar, facing the doors. His heart pounded, not with nervousness, but with righteous fury held carefully in check. The doors opened. Sarah appeared, backlit by afternoon sun, wearing a stunning white gown. She looked like a vision. She looked like a beautiful lie. As she walked down the aisle, David saw her eyes widen slightly at the unexpected guests. She faltered for just a moment, then recovered, her smile never wavering. She reached the altar, taking her place across from him. The priest began. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. David let him proceed through the opening remarks, through the readings, through the first portion of the vows. He wanted her comfortable, confident. If anyone has any reason why these 2 should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. The moment of silence stretched. This was it. David reached up and removed his sunglasses. The effect was instantaneous. Sarah gasped, stumbling backward. Around the chapel, her guests murmured in confusion. David's family remained silent, waiting. "I do," David said clearly, his voice carrying through the chapel. "I have a reason. Several, in fact." "David." Sarah's voice was thin, uncertain. "Your eyes, you can see." David smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Yes, Sarah. I can see. I've been able to see since the day after the accident. I saw everything." The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about? This isn't funny. I saw you smile when the doctor said I was permanently blind." David's voice grew harder. "I heard you on the phone that first day, laughing about the blind fool, and how easy I'd be to control. I watched you photograph my documents, forge my signatures, plot with your lover to steal everything I built." No, you're confused. Your condition. My condition is perfect health and 20/20 vision." David turned to face the chapel. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the real Sarah Thompson. Not the loving fiancée she's pretended to be, but a calculating con artist who spent the past year planning to defraud and murder me." "This is insane." Sarah turned to her guests, to the priest. "He's had a breakdown. The trauma, the blindness, he's not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months." David nodded to Marcus, who pulled out a tablet connected to a portable projector. On the white wall beside the altar, video began to play. Sarah and Ryan in David's living room, discussing the conservatorship plan. Sarah forging documents at his desk. Hotel surveillance footage showing her entering rooms with Ryan. And finally, the kitchen recording from his apartment. Sarah's voice clear and damning. "Not poison. That's too obvious. A medication overdose. He's blind and confused. These things happen." The chapel erupted. Gasps, shouts, movement. Ryan was already on his feet, heading for the door, but two of David's cousins blocked his path. Sarah stood frozen, staring at the wall where her own voice condemned her. "You recorded us?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Every moment, every conversation, every betrayal. David stepped closer. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The smile when I was diagnosed? The way you isolated me from everyone who cared? The cousin you planted? The business rival you brought into my home?" "I loved you," Sarah whispered. "No. You loved my money. You saw a blind man, literally and figuratively, and thought you could take everything." David shook his head. "But I saw you, Sarah. Really saw you. And what I saw was someone willing to commit fraud, perjury, and murder for a fortune she didn't earn." The chapel doors opened. Two detectives entered, badges visible. Sarah Thompson, the lead detective, approached the altar. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted murder, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent." As they read her rights, Sarah's mask finally shattered completely. "You bastard," she hissed at David. "You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so smart? I hope you're happy." "I'm not," David admitted. "But I will be. Eventually." They handcuffed her. As they led her past David, she stopped, meeting his eyes one last time. "I almost had you." "Almost only counts in horseshoes," David replied quietly. Ryan was arrested next, along with two of the doctors who'd agreed to provide false testimony. The lawyer who'd prepared the fraudulent conservatorship documents was already in custody. Marcus had ensured that happened that morning. When the police had gone, the chapel fell silent. David stood alone at the altar, still in his wedding suit, surrounded by the ruins of what should have been the happiest day of his life. Emma approached, wrapping him in her arms. "You did the right thing, David. Then why does it hurt so much?" "Because you loved her. The version of her you thought was real. It's okay to grieve that, even while knowing you made the right choice." The legal proceedings moved swiftly. With the overwhelming evidence David and Marcus had gathered, hours of recordings, financial documents, Testimony from the private investigators. Sarah, Ryan, and their accomplices had few options. Sarah's lawyer approached Marcus within a week. She wants to take a plea deal. David sat in the conference room of his architecture firm, Marcus beside him, as they reviewed the offer. 7 years for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. She would avoid trial, avoid the public spectacle of every detail being exposed. She gets off easy, Marcus said, his voice tight with anger. She gets 7 years in prison, David replied. And a felony record that will follow her forever. That's not nothing. But the truth was, nothing felt like enough. No sentence could undo the betrayal, the months of lies, the trust that had been shattered so completely. David threw himself into work. The West Loop project needed attention. He'd neglected it during his blindness. His firm needed reassurance that he was back, capable, in control. But work couldn't fill the void Sarah had left. Not the void of missing her. He didn't miss her, not really. But the void of trust itself. Every interaction felt suspect now. Every kindness seemed potentially calculated. His sister visited from Seattle, staying for 2 weeks. "You're isolating yourself," Emma observed one evening as they sat in his apartment. "You order in instead of going to restaurants. You work from home instead of going to the office. You're letting her win, David. She's not winning. She's in jail. But you're in a prison of your own making." Emma took his hand. What she did was horrible. Unforgivable. But you can't let it destroy your ability to trust everyone. How do I know who to trust? You start small. You let people earn it. And you remember that most people aren't like Sarah. Dr. Martinez, his neurologist, required a follow-up appointment. When David explained what had happened, the deception, the surveillance, the wedding reveal, she sat back in her chair, stunned. "Mr. Chin, I've been practicing medicine for 20 years. That is, I don't even have words. How are you coping?" "I'm here, aren't I? Physically, yes. But mentally, emotionally." She leaned forward. "Have you considered therapy? What you experienced was profound trauma. Not just the betrayal, but living in constant fear for weeks. The hypervigilance, the performance, that takes a toll." David started seeing a therapist. Dr. Okonkwo, a Nigerian-American psychologist who specialized in trauma. Their sessions were difficult, forcing David to confront not just Sarah's betrayal, but his own role in missing the signs. "You're not responsible for her choices," Dr. Okonkwo said during one session. "But you are responsible for understanding why you were vulnerable to her manipulation." "I wanted to be loved," David admitted. "My parents died when I was young. I built this successful career, but I was lonely. When Sarah showed interest, real interest, or what I thought was real, I grabbed onto it. That's human. That's normal. And it doesn't make you foolish or weak." Slowly, carefully, David began rebuilding his life. He returned to the office full-time. He accepted dinner invitations from friends. He even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. He wasn't ready for that. Marcus remained his anchor. They had always been close, but the ordeal had forged something deeper. Marcus had seen David at his most vulnerable and never wavered. "You saved my life," David said one evening after work. "You saved your own life," Marcus corrected. "I just helped document it." 3 months after the aborted wedding, David attended Sarah's sentencing hearing. He didn't have to be there. His testimony had been given during the plea negotiation, but he needed closure. Sarah looked different in her orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back, no makeup. Smaller somehow. More human. When given the chance to address the court, she stood. "I'm sorry for what I did. I made terrible choices driven by greed and selfishness. I understand if Mr. Chen never forgives me." Her eyes met David's briefly. He saw no real remorse there. Just calculation. One final performance for the judge. 7 years, the judge announced. to be served at Logan Correctional Center. As they led her away, Sarah looked back at David one last time. He held her gaze steadily, no sunglasses now, no pretense. Just a man who'd survived her betrayal and come out stronger. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. David's story had made headlines. Architect fakes blindness to catch killer fiancé. Marcus helped him navigate through them. No comment. Mr. Chen has said everything he needs to say in court. In the car, David looked out at Chicago's skyline. His city. His life. Still his, despite Sarah's best efforts. Where to? Marcus asked. The office, David said. I have buildings to design. 6 months after Sarah's sentencing, Marcus called with an unexpected invitation. My cousin is visiting from Atlanta. She's an environmental engineer working on sustainable urban projects. I think you two should meet. David almost refused. He'd been on a handful of dates since the trial, each one ending in polite distance. He couldn't shake the feeling that everyone wanted something from him. But something in Marcus's voice made him reconsider. Just dinner. No pressure. She doesn't know anything about what happened. I haven't told her because I figured you'd want to share or not share on your own terms. That night, David met Keisha Williams at a small Ethiopian restaurant in Uptown. She was nothing like Sarah. Where Sarah had been polished and perfectly presented, Keisha was natural and unpretentious. She wore simple clothes, minimal jewelry, and when she smiled, it was genuine. Marcus tells me you're an architect, she said after they ordered. I've been following your West Loop project. The green space integration is brilliant. They talked for 3 hours. About her work helping cities adapt to climate change. About his passion for sustainable design. About their families, their dreams, their frustrations with bureaucratic red tape in city planning. David found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in months. Keisha asked questions but didn't pry. She shared stories but didn't dominate. The conversation flowed naturally. When he got home that night, Emma called from Seattle. Marcus texted me. How was the date? It wasn't a date. Just dinner. But how was it? David smiled despite himself. It was nice. Really nice. So you're seeing her again? I don't know. Maybe. He did see her again. And again. They went to the Architecture Biennial, took a boat tour on the lake, explored the Pullman Historic District while discussing urban renewal. Keisha never pushed for more than David was ready to give. When he mentioned he'd been engaged before but didn't elaborate, she simply nodded. We all have pasts. No need to rush into sharing everything. After their 5th dinner, David told her the truth. Everything. The accident, the betrayal, the surveillance, the wedding reveal. Keisha listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. I'm so sorry that happened to you, she finally said. That level of betrayal, I can't imagine. Thank you for trusting me enough to share it. You're not running away. Why would I? You're not damaged, David. You're someone who survived something terrible. That makes you resilient, not broken. It was exactly what he needed to hear. Their relationship developed slowly, carefully. David found himself testing Keisha in small ways, not consciously, but his therapist helped him recognize the pattern. You're checking for consistency, Dr. Okonkwo explained. You're seeing if her words match her actions. That's healthy self-protection, as long as you're also open to what you discover. What David discovered was someone fundamentally honest. When Keisha said she'd call, she called. When she made plans, she kept them. When she disagreed with him, she said so directly rather than manipulating. One evening, Keisha mentioned she was having dinner with a male colleague. David felt a flash of anxiety, the old fear rising up. You okay? Keisha noticed his expression. Yeah, I just. David paused. Sarah used to have colleague dinners that turned out to be something else. Would it help if you joined us? Tom's working on a project I think you'd find interesting. Or I can reschedule if you're uncomfortable. The offer itself was healing. Sarah would have been defensive, accusatory. Keisha was understanding and accommodating without being patronizing. No go. Have a good time. I trust you. And he meant it. 8 months after meeting Keisha, David's firm won a major commission, a sustainable housing development on the south side. It was the kind of project he'd always dreamed of. Meaningful, impactful, challenging. At the celebration dinner, Marcus raised his glass. To David Chen, who refused to let betrayal define him. Who came back stronger than ever. David looked around the table. Marcus, his sister Emma who'd flown in for the announcement, his cousin, a handful of close friends. And Keisha, sitting beside him, her hand warm in his. I couldn't have done it alone, David said. Thank you all for standing by me. Later, walking along the lakefront with Keisha, David realized something profound. For the first time since the accident, he felt genuinely happy. Not just content or recovering, but actually happy. What are you thinking? Keisha asked. That I almost let Sarah's betrayal close me off from this. From you, from happiness, from trust. I'm glad I didn't. So am I, Keisha said, leaning into him. The city lights sparkled on the water. David's city. His life. And this time, he was sharing it with someone who deserved to be there. 1 year after Sarah's sentencing, David stood in the lobby of his newly completed West Loop development. The project he'd been working on when the accident happened was finally finished. A mixed-use building with sustainable features, affordable housing units, and community spaces. It felt like closing a chapter. Keisha stood beside him at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, along with Marcus, Emma, and a crowd of city officials and community members. When the mayor handed David the oversized scissors, he paused. This building represents more than sustainable architecture, David said to the gathered crowd. It represents resilience, perseverance, the ability to rebuild after something tries to tear you down. He didn't mention Sarah explicitly, but those who knew understood. That evening, David took Keisha to dinner at one of his favorite restaurants. The one he'd stopped going to after the betrayal, the one he'd finally felt ready to return to. I have something to tell you, Keisha said after they ordered. I got a job offer. Lead environmental engineer for a major development project. David's heart sank. In Atlanta? In Chicago? Keisha smiled. I turned down a position in D.C. to stay here. I hope that's okay. I wasn't making the decision only because of you, but you're definitely part of why I wanted to stay. The honesty, the directness, the consideration, it was everything Sarah hadn't been. I'm glad you're staying, David said simply. A month later, Dr. Okonkwo asked David a question during therapy. If you could go back and change what happened with Sarah, would you? David thought carefully. The betrayal, the lies, the plan to kill me. Yes, I'd change that if I could. But the person I've become because of it? The awareness, the strength, the ability to see people more clearly? I wouldn't change that. That's growth, Dr. Okonkwo said. That's healing. Sarah occasionally sent letters from prison. David didn't read most of them. Marcus screened them first to ensure they contained no threats. The few Marcus deemed safe enough were mostly self-pitying, occasionally apologetic in ways that felt hollow. David never wrote back. Sarah was his past. He was focused on his future. 18 months after the aborted wedding, David and Keisha took a trip to his parents' hometown in California. He'd avoided going back since they died, but Keisha encouraged him to reconnect with that part of his history. At his parents' grave, David finally spoke words he'd needed to say. I almost lost everything you taught me about trust and love. But I found my way back. I hope you're proud. Keisha stood a respectful distance away, giving him space but offering silent support. On the flight home, David realized something. I want you to meet my extended family. My cousins, my aunt in Oakland, everyone. I want them to know you. I'd love that, Keisha said. 2 years after the accident, David proposed. Not at a charity gala or a fancy restaurant, but in his apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, the home he'd almost lost, the space he'd reclaimed. I love you, he said simply. And I trust you. Those are two different things, and with you, I have both. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. Yes. 1,000 times yes. The wedding was large this time, everyone who mattered. Emma served as the officiant, having gotten ordained specifically for this. Marcus stood as best man. The guest list was filled with people who genuinely cared about David and Keisha, not people who wanted something from them. As David stood at the altar, a different woman, a different life, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. The blindness, both literal and figurative. The betrayal that had shattered him. The strength he'd found in the breaking. When Keisha walked down the aisle, there was no doubt, no fear, no hidden cameras. Just love, genuine and true. I can see you, David whispered as she took his hands, echoing words from a darker time but giving them new meaning. I can see you too, Keisha replied. All of you. The ceremony was joyful, the reception full of laughter and dancing. When David and Keisha cut the cake, Marcus leaned over and whispered, "Look at you now, brother. You made it." "We made it," David corrected. "I couldn't have done this alone." Later, as David danced with his new wife, surrounded by people who truly loved them, he realized something profound. Sometimes you have to go through darkness to appreciate the light. You have to experience betrayal to recognize genuine love. You have to break to become unbreakable. He'd pretended to be blind and discovered the truth. Now, with his eyes wide open, literally and metaphorically, he could finally see the life he was meant to live. Not the life Sarah had tried to steal, but the one he'd built himself. Stronger, wiser, and surrounded by real love. Thank you for joining us on David's incredible journey from betrayal to redemption. If this story moved you, smash that like button and subscribe to Urban Legends Retold for more powerful true stories. Share this with someone who needs hope after heartbreak. Comment below. What lesson did you take from David's story? We read every comment. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your heart wise. Peace.